Please rise. March 22nd, 2023 meeting of Haliburton County Council is now in session. Warden Liz Danielson presiding.
Please be seated. And good morning, everyone. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located in Treaty 20 Michi-Sauge territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Sauge and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda as amended, please? Councillors Fury and Burton.
Moved by Councillor Fury, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that the March 22nd, 2023 Haliburton County Council agenda be approved as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? I'm seeing none. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from February the 22nd and 27th? Councillors Carter and McKechnie.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that the minutes from the February 22nd, 2023 regular meeting and the February 27th, 2023 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no business arising from our previous meeting. So we'll move into delegations. And I'm very pleased to introduce the chair of the Warden's Caucus, Peter Amo, and the CAO of Hastings County, Jim Pine. Good morning, gentlemen. Lovely to be able to see you both here in person.
Thank you very much and good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. And prior to our presentation, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Warden Danielson for the invitation, but also in speaking with former Chair Deb Robinson. She's in Florida, but we talk on a pretty regular basis. She wanted me to express her thanks for your support and your guidance in council when she was chair of the Warden's Caucus. And I'd also like to express those sentiments on behalf of the Warden's Caucus. Your service has been exemplary while you've been with us, and we've certainly appreciated it. And I know I will continue to benefit from your advice.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for the invitation and opportunity to speak to you today about the Eastern Ontario Warden's Caucus 7-7 Regional Housing Plan. As chair of the 2023 Eastern Ontario Warden's Caucus, I'm pleased to be here today with Jim Pine, who I think you know very well. I know our time with you today is short, and we're going to share the podium, so let me get started. I believe that I can safely assume that housing, and particularly the lack of affordable housing, is one of your council's top concerns. I know it is for the 13 members of the Eastern Ontario Warden's Caucus. In fact, tackling the housing and related homelessness issues is our primary priority as a group. There is a chronic and serious supply problem of not only regular housing, but community or social housing across our region. And that is certainly the situation here in your county as well as in my own. Wait lists for community housing continues to grow. Across Eastern Ontario, we can tell you that there are between 12 and 14,000 households in desperate need of access to community housing that our municipalities operate. People on our community housing waiting lists, whether here or in my county, are left waiting on average 4.5 years, and in some cases up to 10 years to get access to safe, affordable community housing. Each of us in our jurisdiction has been doing our best over the years to try and tackle this supply challenge. While we have made progress, it is just not enough to solve the problem. That's why the Eastern Ontario Warden's Caucus has come together to put our collective resources and experiences into a bold new regional solution. It's big and it's definitely bold. And to give you the details, I'd like to turn it over to Jim Pine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Honor, members of council, it's great to be back here at the county. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the preliminary details of what the EOWC is proposing when we talk about the 7-7 plan. So we can go to the next slide, please. As you well know, the East Ontario Wardens Caucus serves a very large piece of Ontario, shown by the map here. It's about the same size as the province of Nova Scotia, actually, in terms of size. There's about 1.2 million in terms of population that the EOW serves, and large parts of it, as you know, and I know, in Hastings County, are rural communities and folks who live across all of our counties. So, as the chair said, last summer, housing managers from across the east got together to talk about the situation, and as he also said, that we all have been trying on our own to fix the problem as best we can in terms of the supply, in terms of bringing our wait list down to something that is more appropriate. I guess we could say it, the best number would be 0, of course, in terms of a wait list. But we got together last year and said, if we're going to try and fix this, we need to do it together. We need to come together once again, like we've done for problems like fixing broadband services, or as we're working on improving cell coverage across the region. If we do it together, we think we can, really make a big improvement in the housing situation for the folks that we are trying to care for. This is a group of individuals who are part of the housing continuum, but that rely on the support of government to try and find an affordable place to live. So that's the lane that we're in as the EOWC. The next slide is just a reiteration of the challenge that we face. These numbers are actually growing as we speak. They were done about just under a year ago. And I know in my county, my wait list is now well over 3,000 households, up from about 2,800 just a few months ago. So the challenge continues to grow in terms of people looking for a place that they can call home, that they can afford. And with the long wait list, the challenge, I think, really speaks to the need for us to do something bold. And I keep thinking to myself, if not us as the EOWC, then who is going to work on this challenge? Because it really does fall to us, unfortunately, to try and make a big change. Next slide. As you well know, the province has a goal of 1.5 million new homes in Ontario by 2031. When the Wardens Caucus was looking at our segment of the housing continuum, we wanted to make sure that Ontario knew that we were trying to solve a problem where we think that the focus of Ontario's effort is generally on ownership, housing ownership. So we didn't want the sector of rental to be left out in terms of trying to fix a solution. So we want to be part of the provincial initiative, and we want to do this by working on the rental side in terms of affordable housing. So the plan is, as the chair said, is to try and take a big bite out of that combined waiting list by working towards the building of 7,000 new RGI, or rent geared to income units, that folks that are on our wait list could get into. And we also think that it's an opportunity, in the next slide, to really to work with the private sector. We recognize that government can't do this alone and shouldn't, that there may be a market based on what we've been experiencing locally for the private sector to join with us in this effort. And what we've found in our work is that when we can come together with the private sector to try and build affordable units with them in a mixed model approach, or a mixed income approach, as we call it, they will come to the table with money of their own. And the evidence shows us that typically when we can incent one RGI unit to be built, the private sector will come and build 3 of their own market rate rent. So we think not only can we do 7,000 units, we can incent with the private sector to build another 21,000 units that others can make, they call their home in terms of rental. So we think it's a perfect public-private partnership arrangement that we are proposing. In the next slide, the evidence continues to build for this project, in our view. Just in mid-January this year, Scotiabank, through its global economics group, came out with a report that actually recommended to Canada that what we needed to do, Canada needed to do, was at least double its social housing stock to help those in the greatest need, which is exactly what we're trying to do in our areas to improve the supply of stock. They tell us that it's the best and first best solution to unlock greater supply. That's, I think, the PPP model that we're really talking about with it. And that unlocking the supply, i.e. adding supply, is going to help relieve pressure across the housing continuum. The interesting point from my point of view is the fourth one, where the Scotiabank is suggesting to governments, federal and provincial, that what they really need to do is move to higher rates, what they call concessionality. That is really simply government investing directly in grant-based approach to supporting the construction of these new units. So we need the federal government to invest more. We know they've just announced the Housing Accelerator Fund, and we'll be looking at that. But we also need the provincial government to invest in this kind of housing as well through their grant programs. And at the end of the day, the Scotiabank, I think, supports again what we're saying, that they say it's one of the most cost-efficient ways for government in the long run to try and solve this problem in terms of housing. We also know that the EOWC is going to have to advocate, work with the federal and provincial governments to up their support for the ongoing operational costs that come with rent geared to income housing, that it shouldn't be all done on the backs of property taxpayers in our local municipality. And as you probably know, Ontario is the only jurisdiction in the country where housing is a local responsibility. In every other jurisdiction, they're responsible, the provincial governments and territorial governments. But if you remember 20 years ago, there was the change and through the who does what exercise that we took on the Ontario housing portfolio for the provincial government. So we have a special need in Ontario, and we need the support of all three levels of government, which is the next slide. So the Wardens Caucus recognizes that we all have to come together in this effort. That is the EOWC, our local municipalities, the province, the federal government, the private sector, and of course, when we talk about this kind of housing, the not-for-profit sector. They are an important part of the build solution as well. And as the chair said, this really is a bold investment. In the next slide, we've costed it out for the 7,000 units at about $3.1 billion to build them. It's based on numbers that we've validated across our housing groups in the East at about $440,000 per unit on average to construct. And this will be a mix of singles, studio, singles, 1-2 bedroom, and perhaps 3-bedroom units as well. But on average, about $440,000 to build a unit. That doesn't include if we have to bring servicing to the site, or if we had to purchase lands, which is why the EOWC wants to come together to work together to find where we can use municipal lands that might be available or other lands in order to reduce the cost and look for servicing solutions, particularly important for the rural parts of our jurisdictions. We want this housing to be available in communities right across Haliburton County and places like Hastings County. It all can't just be in the urban cities. It's got to be serving our rural communities. So if we can do this, we know that building residential housing units is one of the best multipliers for economic activity. That's a fact that's true. So on the conservative side, it'll add about $9 billion worth of economic activity into the region if we can build these 7,000 units. So it's a great way to grow the local economy at the same time. If you think about who you're going to employ in these construction projects, it'll be a lot of local folks who are in the building trades and financial markets will support that. So it's a great way to support the region's economy. Just to give you a little bit better idea how this might look, in the next slide, what we've done is used basically we called it a zone approach to this in terms of if we were rolling out requests for proposals for the building of projects. And all I did was create these particular zones. This will change. This is just a notional representation of how it might happen. But we've found through our experience with EORN in the broadband programs that if we break the region down into zones, we can run RFPs that allow smaller companies to participate in projects. That was in broadband, but we know it'll work in this kind of effort as well. So all I did was take the wait list, the percentage of wait lists that each of these zones represent to the whole, and said, how would we allocate out the money? And essentially you can see how that would look in terms of this notional representation. These numbers will change, of course, but it gives you, I hope, just an idea of what we're thinking about. So for what I call the Haliburton Kawartha Lake zone, you're talking about just under $500 million worth of investment. And then if we flip to the next slide, it breaks down to about 1,225 units and for that your zone. And then if we go to the next slide, which is the Haliburton Kawartha Lake zone, named by me quite originally, of course, Haliburton first. So, but I just thought I'd call it that. The next slide, I took how it would look if we broke down in terms of the number of units between your share of the current wait list and Kawartha Lake's share of the current wait list. So it would look like about 490 units would come your way, 735 would go to the city of Kawartha Lakes. Just again, notionally, and how that would look in terms of sort of the money side. If you can go to the next slide, about just under $200 million here and just under $300 million in Kawartha Lakes to build those units. Again, this is just a notional representation, but wanted to give you a flavor of how it might roll out and what it might look like in your communities. So the next slide is just saying that if we do this, this will be great for the regional economy. It'll be best, of course, for the folks that we can house. We know that housing is the best form of social health determinant. And so it has the social benefit of giving people a place to live. And it's going to improve our local economy for years to come as we build these out. And the next slide is again, just about the importance of the public-private partnerships. We're working hard with the private sector now to validate our ideas. We've retained a consultant, KMW Consulting, to help us with the business plan, because we know as we move forward with the federal and provincial governments, they're going to want specific details and plans. So that's underway right now. We're working with that. And so the next slide is just a couple of comments. We know we can do this because we've got expertise in working on big regional projects through the broadband work and the cell work that we're doing. And we know with the support of other organizations as we move along, we can build a really good, strong coalition to make this project come to life. And the last slide, in terms of next steps, we are in the process of course, speaking with governments, both federally and provincially, local governments through meetings like this. We're working on the business case to put that in place, which we know we need to do. And we're going to be soon initiating discussions and conversations and consultations with First Nations and Indigenous communities across the land that we call home as well. That's a very important piece of work that we need to do as we move this project forward. We know that housing is a critically important concern for First Nations communities and Indigenous communities across the region. We hope maybe by the fall to be in a position to actually launch a pilot project in one of the zones to give proof of concept to what we're talking about. So that's also in the planning stages now. And if all went really well and we got the commitment of the federal and provincial governments, we could be looking at starting the work next year in terms of the construction of the other units. So it's ambitious, but as I said at the beginning, if not us, then who is going to do this? It really is another opportunity for us to show leadership as a region in trying to tackle a persistent problem that isn't getting any better, is only getting more difficult. So we know it's a supply problem, and in order to fix that supply, we know we have to build. So if I can leave you with just after the next slide is just a little video that the EOWC has put together. I think that sort of wraps it up, and then we're happy to take questions. So.
The Eastern Ontario Women's Caucus has a track record of bringing people together to solve problems that are too big for any one government governmental industry. For more than a decade, the EOWC has collaborated with governments and the private sector on regional scale solutions. Now it's coming together along with partner service managers to address the housing crisis. On average, people in Eastern Ontario can wait 5 to 10 years for affordable community housing. We all know something must be done. The province aims to build 1.5 million homes by 2031. This goal must meet the needs of all Ontarians, rural and urban. The EOWC has a bold regional solution to tackle the waitlist. Over 7 years, the EOWC wants to help build 7,000 new rental units. Taking a public-private approach, the plan would build a mix of community and market housing. The investment could spur a number of housing units across the region, helping to meet the needs of people across different incomes, ages, and stages of life. The EOWC plan takes a collaborative and innovative approach to building new supply, from funding to servicing. Greater economies of scale would reduce costs to build more faster. We are ready to work with the provincial and federal governments, as well as for-profit and non-profit partners. Join us to create strong communities where everyone can afford a place to call home.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've all heard all levels of government say that housing is their top priority. And I think that, if we all move forward and support this project, it might help in bringing those commitments together and really making a difference. And as you've heard, and I can fully attest from my experience with the Wardens Caucus that the Wardens Caucus and EORN do have a very good track record. They've shown that they can bring big projects together. And I would like to see us support this project for sure. I think it just works for us in so many areas. I would look to members of council for questions that they might have. Councillor Fury.
Well, thank you, and certainly I support what you're doing, Jim. And one of the problems we've got is that the provincial policy statement on rural Ontario in Haliburton County and in all our local plans, and Mr. Stone would verify this, even though the services are there that have been traditionally in the rural areas, you're restricted to getting severances, and people can't even get a lot to give their kids. And that's created a big cost. And I know that municipalities and county has to come forward and provide land. That's not going to be the total solution. I see that all the time. So we need a little pressure on Queen's Park here to relax some of those rural areas, because that must be true everywhere.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That fits in with the conversation I've had with some ministry staff, and then also with, by amazing coincidence, one of the larger regional governments, some of their councillors. I sit on the AMO and Roma board as well. And they were talking about some of their subdivisions. I said, look, in a 4-year term, you may approve subdivisions with a total of 1,000 homes. I said, I've been in municipal council since 1988. I expect my career is going to be 400 homes by the time I'm done, because I said, we get a 20 or 25 unit subdivision, we're dancing in the street. And instead of taking 18 months, it takes 3 or 4 years, because we have to work our way through, as you say, the provincial policy statement, the various ministries. And then we also have to talk to the power provider, whoever, if it's Hydro One or if it's somebody regional, and that always takes time. So I said, part of the package is there needs to be a recognition by the province when they sign on to this, that we need someone assigned to the file for an expedited process. So I agree with you. And I think we're laying the groundwork, and I'm sure Jim and Meredith and the rest of the CAOs are doing that as well.
Well, and just to add to that, one of the things that the Wardens Caucus has recently done was they're setting out their priorities for the next year. And of course, housing is at the top of the list, and there's an awful lot of items that were raised that we can advocate to change a lot of the regulations that are at the provincial level and hopefully smooth the way, assuming that we're successful. Councillor Dayu.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I am very much in support of the initiative. I have 3 questions which might be too early to provide an answer on, but here goes. Do you have any sense of the implications for our budget? If you're thinking about a pilot project as early as next winter, what should we be thinking about? Or do you have a sense for a year, 2 years out? That's the first question. Would locating property be an in-house method for Haliburton County? And if so, do you have some timelines, ideal timelines yet for that? That's my second question. And third, would you comment a little bit more on the uptake in interest so far at the higher orders of the government for the project?
Yeah, three really good questions, actually. In terms of budget, it's probably just a little bit early. We're not sure where the pilot would go. But in my earlier comments, we talked about the importance of the provincial, at least the provincial government, recognizing the ongoing costs of, if we're going to own the units, that might be one of the models that people will want to do at the end of the day. Maybe you want to add it to your existing housing stock, your social housing stock. Then there will be ongoing operating costs and maintenance costs over the years. We know that's going to happen. And we know that the federal or the provincial governments need to support us in those costs more than they do now. So that's one thing that we're going to have to continue to work on. If it's a mixed model approach where the private sector is building a building and these rental units become part of that, the idea of a mixed income model is that the market rate units help defer the cost of operating the facilities and perhaps reduce some of the burdens. But we may still have rent geared to income requirements to support people in their rent going forward. That's for sure. In terms of land, we're looking at working together to find out what land may be available. Maybe that's an in-kind contribution that gets considered as part of a county contribution, for instance, or a local contribution. So we're still working on what the financing or the financial sharing model would be based on our prior projects, where we know we'll be able to find one that will work for all of us. In terms of the uptake with governments, actually, and Peter can speak to this as well, so far so good. No one has told us to pack our bags and never come back and talk to them. And I think that's in part because of the credibility that we do have as an organization. And as far as we can see, we're the only ones that so far that have come forward with a plan that looks at trying to tackle this on a regional basis. We've participated in a meeting with the federal minister of housing, and I was part of that meeting and got a very favorable review from him. He likes the idea of a regional approach to this rather than multiple applications. He really was interested in our approach, and we're working with the provincial and federal folks. I know Mike is doing his bit in talking to you and Your Honor with your local members provincially and federally, and we're all doing that. So I think so far so good. I know I'm going to Ottawa next week to speak to some folks there who are interested. So we just keep at it. All of us, our voices are all together really important in this. So I would say any chance there's an opportunity for you to advocate for the project, please do.
Continue.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up question on the selection of land. Rather than the financing, would the actual identification of the plots be something that this table would decide, or and if yes, then do you have some deadlines in mind for that?
We'll certainly have a big role to play in identifying available land. No question. I think that will be done locally. Perhaps it will be rolled up through the county in that effort. So we need to match land with demand as well. Where should these units go? So there'll be that kind of sorting out that happens. I don't have a specific deadline for you now. We really like to get a sense that this is going to go forward with federal and provincial support, and we'll roll up our sleeves. We've asked EORN to support the contract management of the work so far, and we're working with the other consultants. So it'll be a roll up the sleeve time once we get a really good sense of if this thing has got legs and it's going to go forward. So lots of opportunity to participate, I guess. Yeah.
Further questions? Councillor Carter.
So I'm on the Housing Corporation. I'm also on the board of Habitat for Humanity. So one of our problems is obviously math. You're at $400,000+ per unit. The carrying cost on that is, a couple $1,000 just on interest, and all of our formulas that go to determining affordable housing limits, you just can't make that work. And the problem is that if you can't make that work, then the government, penalizes you by not giving you all sorts of other grants, which then increases your costs. So, and the second part is particularly here in rural communities is service land. If all of a sudden you have to start adding, the water and sewer to that, and getting somebody like Aqua to be your inspector, that increases your cost per unit again. So I guess that, there's a whole number of different areas where the government can be helping us in infrastructure and so on, that not necessarily directly related to housing. And so this has got to be something that is, you have to be fighting on a lot of different fronts to make this work.
If I may, through Your Honor, yeah, absolutely true. We recognize right off the bat that servicing is a critical piece to this. We're looking at, Frontenac County, for instance, is looking at really innovative stuff around community servicing. We're trying to find different ways to do that to reduce the cost and to make sure that development can happen in some of the more rural areas where it needs to be, and not just be I won't say a slave to the serviced area, but totally be dependent on being serviced. But yes, absolutely, it's a cost that needs to be factored in. That's why I said at the beginning, $3.1 billion is exclusive of servicing costs. So, but I don't know how else we're going to deal. If we can't tackle those things, we're not going to solve the problem. And I think the provincial and federal governments need to recognize that as well. And that's why we've gone with the public-private approach. Our goal is, frankly, is to get as much private sector money in and federal and provincial government money in, and reduce the burden on the taxpayer to the greatest extent possible that we can. But these are costs that you can't avoid for sure.
Another thing that was raised at the Wardens Caucus, where there was a lot of discussion about advocating for communal services and this new model that's being tested, as Jim spoke to. So, that's high on their list of priorities at all levels of government. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. We've been doing a couple things. I've been doing a couple of things. I've been on the chicken wing and beer circuit with some staff people whenever I'm in Toronto or Ottawa, just starting to educate them about some of the struggles for rural Ontario. And then also through AMO and Roma, I've sent an email to all of the zone reps asking them to forward anything that's innovative or new that they've used in the last little while to address communal systems for any smaller pocket developments in their community. So I'm starting to get a little bit of that to trickle in. We have a board meeting on Friday, and I'll bring it up again. So we are trying to get a binder full of information, if you will, just so that we have some answers, or at least something that we can, stick our fingernails in and start pulling on.
Further questions? I really like to thank you, gentlemen. I think it's in all our hearts that this is a successful project, and I think we'll all do everything we can. Through your work, it's going to help. It's a real struggle for a small municipality to, how can we get this going? How can we make this work? And through a regional approach, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for success. So if there's no further questions, I'd like to have a mover and a seconder. I think we have a resolution to receive and support.
Yes.
I just, as a note, before you run off, I think our CAO might have a few comments after a resolution. A mover, Councillor Burton, seconder, Councillor Fury.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Fury. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives and supports the delegation from Mr. Jim Pine and Mr. Peter Emo regarding EOWC's 7-in-7 Regional Housing Plan Initiative, and that the EOWC be notified of our support.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Warden Danielson. This was probably going to be Jim Pine's last time in our council chambers as a CAO. I suspect we'll probably see him in a different role or different capacity in the future, but I honestly, I can't think of any civil servant who's probably changed the landscape in so many ways more than Jim Pine. And whether it's broadband or cellular coverage, who does what panel. He wrote a watertight report, which we've even referenced recently. The public health and EMS modernization, which hasn't really finished, and he won't give us any hints on whether that will happen at all. But we know a lot of seeds were planted in those conversations that will likely grow later. He has just literally changed the landscape of Eastern Ontario and the province and as a whole. And I can't say how many times I've been in a room where it's a little bit chaotic, where, a lot of leaders have, so many ideas and they're throwing them out there, and Jim just brings a calm and quiet wisdom to the whole mix with his comments, and really brings focus. And so, Jim, just on behalf of Haliburton County, thank you so much for all you've done. I know I personally have learned so much from you, which probably makes council wonder how little I knew when I started, but I've learned so much, and it's just been a pleasure working with you. You are fantastic.
What's the guy gonna say?
Well, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, which is unbelievable, actually. But Mike, thanks so much for those very, very kind words. It's been a great run, 43 years in working in municipal affairs. I've loved every minute of it. I'm glad to say it's every day I woke up, I wanted to get to work. And I think we've all are driven by the same goal. All of us sitting around the table, I think, are driven by the same goal, and that's simply to try and help people. That's why we're here as government, whether it's local government, provincial, or federal. We should all be just focused on that. And because that's always been my goal, it's always been rewarding to try and do things. I've always been someone who wanted to try and do things for others, for the communities and stuff. So it's been a great run. Hard to give it up, I'll be honest, but I think I feel like an elected official who's been on council for many, many years. It's hard to give up something when you're just trying to be a part of, something that will help folks. So thanks for everything. And if I'm back, it'll be in a different role or just a heckle. I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you for the invitation. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that.
Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So next, we're looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations from our March 8th Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Fury.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Fury. Be it resolved that the recommendations from the March 8th, 2023 meeting of Haliburton County Committee of the Whole be adopted by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? That's carried. I don't believe we have anything coming from the Accessibility Committee, although I believe they're going to be meeting soon. So next on the agenda is Planning and Environment. And I believe that we have a report from Mr. Stone on a Bishop's request for extension on a draft approval for subdivision. Good morning, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Madam Ward, and rest of the council. Yes, I do have a report on a extension request for a plan of subdivision that dates back many, many years. As recently as this morning, we've been as staff meeting with the proponent and have been working on adjusting the conditions. And so I have a handout for council's benefit that's highlighted that reflects some of the changes to those conditions. There were some things that were brought to light as recently as yesterday afternoon that warranted us to take a fresh look at those conditions. So with your leave, I'll get up and hand out the document.
If you have a handout, we'd sure like to see it. Steve.
So to quickly go over this plan of subdivision, so it will be serviced by a municipal road at some point when it's finally registered. The road allowance will be dedicated and managed by the township, but it will have some intersection with County Road 13. So with that, probably the most significant changes to these conditions as late as this morning deal with condition number 3. And it's highlighted in the sense that originally this was draft approved with the former township, and then word changes occurred probably 2012 and beyond to reflect the amalgamation of the former townships into the present day township of Algonquin Highlands. And what was missed in condition number 13 is that the county has the road naming responsibility and the numbering of lots. So what we've done is we've just added a clarifying point to that. We've added our name, so it still is a joint exercise between the township and the county to come up with the name and the numbering exercise, but ultimately it'll be the county public works department that will assist in clearing that condition. And there is a fee that's associated with that exercise. So that's what condition number 3 reflects. Condition number 6 was a source of many discussions over the last 2 weeks. And ultimately what we've done is just reduce it to the zoning, which is a township function. There was some back and forth discussion on archaeological resources, and it was pointed out that there is a subdivision agreement that reflects that requirement. So what you saw in what that was circulated with the agenda has since been dropped. Number 10 is probably the most significant change to the conditions. And what it was realized is that there is an intersection with County Road 13, and the early conditions are actually silent on that requirement for design standards. So what we did as a staff team is discuss what was most appropriate, and it was concluded that the condition actually had to be amended in such a way that it reflects commercial design standard for that intersection. And the reason for that is we didn't want to have any long-term liabilities on the county with regards to unsafe intersections. So that was discussed with the proponents this morning. And with his leave, we'll probably actually have a meeting out on site in the next couple of weeks to discuss that further. Condition number 11 was a 2-part condition originally, and that's since been reduced to 1 part. And for that reason, it was reflected in the subdivision agreement. So that was the change there. And similarly in condition number 13, it was a 2-part condition, A and B. And the second part of that condition was ultimately dropped. And so we rolled it just into a single condition. And as I said, we've had those discussions with the proponent this morning, and he's a delegate and he can speak to those as well. So thank you very much.
At this point, are there any questions of Mr. Stone with respect to what he's presented? Councillor Carter?
Is there anything extraordinary about any of this? I mean, if I was to be creating a plan of subdivision today, would I just be following all these rules? Is there, I mean, what about this is bringing it, obviously the requirement for the extension, but all of these changes, is there anything special that I should be looking at?
Well, thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. The most extraordinary is the possibility that the intersection as it's proposed which is on municipal land. It's not actually within the plan of subdivision, may have to be realigned to line up with another intersection that already exists. So that's hence the reason for the addition of, or the adjustment to that condition. So
Is that the intersection Braylock?
I believe so, yes.
Further questions? Councillor Dayu?
A very simple remark and request for consideration with my Algonquin Highlands hat on. As per the Algonquin Highlands cultural plan, we have a commitment to send new road naming options to our cultural committee within the township for their inputs, in case they've got any thoughts on it, to advise back to the two councils. And with your consideration, it'd be nice to be able to do that in this instance too.
Within our street naming requirements, is there an ability to do that?
I will have to defer to the Public Works staff in that regard, but I just in terms of the conditions itself, number 3 does allow for that to happen.
So just for something for you to keep in mind. I see the mention of Hawk Valley Drive. Is that what's being proposed? Okay. Any other questions for Steve at this point? Thank you, sir. We would ask Mr. Bishop to come forward and make his comments. And Steve, you might as well stay right where you are, just in case that, you know, further questions come up. Morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Fancy
Warden
seeing you
Danielson,
again.
how's that? I'm not used to saying that, but yes, a discussion's been ongoing for the last 2 or 3 weeks, actually, and maybe we'll start from the start there. Hawk Valley Drive was the one that was put on the draft plan of subdivision in 92. And maybe to back up to begin with, I'm just the agent for this. I have no ownership in this property. It's my son and my wife, but we have connection, obviously, from a family perspective. I'm not stuck on Hawk Valley Drive at all. We're certainly willing to listen to anything or any suggestions you may have on a naming perspective. You know, from that, you know, no issue whatsoever on that. So if you want to send that to the cultural committee and you've come up with something that you think suits the area or suits something, you've got the log sheet, you've got all kinds of things going on along that river. So there may be a name that better suits the area. So that's certainly wide open for any suggestion on that front. So, and even condition 6B was removed. My concern generally was it was kind of added last minute, and we're trying to come to the conclusion of this subdivision. And even though you see all these conditions, almost every single one of them have already been met. It's just a matter of going through the general processes and so on. And even I'm born and raised here, 7th generation. I have concern over cultural matters in those as well. And so a lot of discussion even happened this morning, even after removing that condition, because of my personal concerns. So condition 10 is the addition, and this is a significant addition, of which, again, we discussed this morning, and obviously from a sightline perspective, it's critical. And it wasn't a condition of the original draft plan of subdivision. So the assumption is there's something on file. You know, what allowed this to get to where it was today without having something or some acknowledgement of that entrance where it was. Again, as Stephen said, nothing's found in the file, whatever. So that's been added as a condition. So this is more of us coming back to the township actually saying, ooh, we may need to, and as you know, it's already built. We may need to slide this entrance towards Blaylock Road because we have a sightline issue. Don't know what's going to transpire on that. But between where the road sits today, the township owns the next chunk towards the bridge, and then we own the rest to the bridge. So this can get moved. And as along with cooperation with the township, if it has to get moved, we will move it. We're talking thousands of dollars, probably 30, 50,000 to move it if we have to move it. So it's not a small amount, but we appreciate the issue around obviously sight lines and liability as well. and satisfied that that condition should be there and needs to be met. So again, that's an additional condition that's there. As far as 11 and 13, as Stephen's already said, those have been amended because generally speaking, they're already in the subdivision agreement. We did an environmental study. There's actually further restrictions within the environmental impact study as there is even with your own tree cutting bylaw and so on. And as Sean said in his emails, let's not confuse it by adding two different bylaws within the same agreement. It's already in your agreement that we approved and signed last August of 22. So I think we're in good shape with all the rest of the conditions, and I'm satisfied with what's being proposed here today.
Questions for Mr. Bishop? Councillor Fury.
Well, I think, Mr. Bishop and Mr. Stone have come to a compromise here and I have all faith in
Oh,
what-
your mic's not on.
Yeah, I think they've come to a good compromise here. I think this is doable. And I know certainly I have the confidence that Algonquin Highlands will not assume the road until the intersection is resolved. So that should take that out of the equation. I think we should support it.
Other questions from members of council? The only question that I have is the need for it to, for the road to be developed or the intersection to be developed to commercial standards. Could you explain why that is?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the rest of the council. So that's, again, I would defer to Public Works staff in that regard, but it is, given the, as I understand it, the nature of traffic within the neighborhood, there are a number of trucks that are involved. So I will, again, would have to defer to the Public Works Director in that regard.
And through you, Ms. Danielson, Warden Danielson, the only thing I can comment on that as being an engineer is you always look at commercial entrance once you're over 3 capacity, whether it's a highway, whether it's a county, whether it's whatever. You got to look at sight lines, you got to look at widenings and all those types of things that go along on a standard subdivision and entrance of this type. So those are pretty standard requirements.
Well, I'm hearing that you've come to an agreement and you're not opposed to any of these particular conditions that have been set.
Not at all. All as I say is if it has to move, it's going to involve Algonquin Highlands to allow us to shift it onto potentially your property further over towards the bridge, rebuild the entrance. And as long as we've got that, that commitment that you'll keep working with us to get that done and have it done right. I have no issue with that condition being added.
I hear the if it's got to move and exactly what is going to determine that. Maybe, I just need a little bit of clarification
Sure.
on.
It's going to be a combination of speed through there. I mean, it's transportation related, right? And so most of the county road along there, and we were talking about this morning, the last minute, is actually 50 kilometers in that. So it's a sightline issue. And so if you go across the bridge and then you start up that curve beyond where our entrance is now, do we have enough sightline looking as you're coming out, looking to the left? That's my direct concern right off the bat. I keep looking at that, but it's based on speed limit and those types of things. Do we have to shift 30 feet maybe only? Or no, we need to pick the whole road up and move it over the width of itself or so on. Or we even discussed this morning, lining it up with Braylock, which in generally is if you have to move it that far, that's the best place to put it is opposite Braylock so that you're meeting each other as you're coming back and forth across. So
It is quite a move though.
that is a real big move. I have to agree with you. Again, if sightlines work and it's only 30 feet, suggesting that's probably what we should do, but that is a big move. I have to agree.
So there's a little bit more work to do, but in the meantime, we can pass a resolution with respect to what we have in front of us.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Could I have a mover and a second to move forward this? Councillors Dayu and Fury.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Fury. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the planning report entitled Request for Extension of Draft Approval of a Plan of Subdivision, file number 46T-91001, near Bishop for information, and that Haliburton County Council amends the approval of the draft plan of subdivision submitted by Greg Bishop for lands located in part of Lot 17, concessions 9 and 10, geographic township of Stanhope, now in the municipality of Algonquin Highlands, to extend the lapsing of draft approval to April 27th, 2025.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And do we have a resolution to receive Mr. Bishop's presentation?
I do.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councilors Carter and McKechnie.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the delegation from Mr. Greg Bishop requesting council support for an extension of draft approval of file number 46-T-91001.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Bishop,
Thank you.
and good luck. We we really look forward to this subdivision finally getting a move on, and
For sure.
us being able to, there be some properties available in
Absolutely.
Algonquin Islands. So
Hydro and Bell started going in a week ago Monday, so we're obviously hopeful to get this thing going sooner than later. And just indulge me for a second here from that last topic, and I'm just going off topic. As you know, I'm the elder chair of the Ontario Land Tribunal. I retire in June. That last topic's passionate for me, again, born and raised in the area. And I really do believe you need those private partnerships with local people that will help connect that. And I'm certainly willing to sit on a committee if it comes to that. I think I know almost every inch of this county. If you're looking for lands and stuff like that, I'm certainly willing and open to sit on an ad hoc committee at any point in time to help that on. I was on the Haliburton County Development Corp. I was the chair. That's another area of passion for me to support our local people in the area. So that's just an aside. And thank you.
thank you very much. Next up is your planning department update.
Thank you, Madam Warren, to the rest of council. It's a fairly standard report. The only thing that I will bring to council's attention is that we've made contact and had a good discussion with legal counsel that's going to be providing us opinion on the two bylaws related to the short-term rental project. And they've indicated that they hope to have their opinion to staff early in April. So that's exciting. So thank you very much.
Any questions on the department update? Councillor Dayu?
Thanks very much. It's a question about community transportation, which harkens back to the proposal for the RFP that was brought forward 1 or 2 meetings ago. When we discussed ridership, there were 2 types of ridership. One was the current ridership of folks using services that are available currently, but the other was the need to gather data on prospective ridership for a bigger system. That we ultimately deferred, but I just wondered if there was scope around this table to consider undertaking a survey to figure out what the potential prospective ridership might be for the broader community transportation commitment that we have. That's a question. We didn't really land on that at the last meeting, and I wondered if it's something that council might be interested in exploring.
Have you got any comments to that, Mr. Stone?
Thank you, Madam Warden, to rest of councils. That would have been the scope of the project if the RFP had been released and a consultant hired for that.
Which we put a hold on. Councillor Dayu?
I had read that proposal in another way, that it was a proposed RFP for the modeling of the system, but I don't recall seeing a data collection component to that RFP. Have I mistaken myself there?
Thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So that would have been part of the background effort or research that they would have done to support a particular model. So,
So it is in essence included in the work that's proposed.
that is correct. It would have to be if they were going to propose a certain type of or form of transit. They would have had to have background information to support that it would be functional and viable.
So given that that is something that's been deferred, you know, if at some point you wish to have further discussion or beef that aspect of the RFP up, we can bring that back to council to consider. Go ahead.
If I may, I would be quite interested in parsing out that component of it and thinking about it a little bit more. You know, if we had 4 different service providers considering putting through an RFP, we would be looking at potentially 4 different surveys for potential ridership, and then things get a little bit cloudy and there's a lot of public consultation going on out there. I wonder if we could ask staff to explore that a tiny bit more indeed.
Is there an interest by other members of council for us to do that? I'm not seeing a lot of comment there. But I mean, it's something, if you want to work on that and bring a stronger argument back to council at some point in time for us to include that, we've got time to do that. So any other questions on the department update? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the department's report? Councillors Burton and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the planning report PLN 22-2023 entitled Planning Department Update for March 2023 as information.
All in favor? That's carried. The next item is with respect to the composition of the land division. As you're all aware, we saw the challenges associated with having a 4-member committee most recently, and have asked for a report to be brought forward on how we might consider going forward with resolving that issue. And I'll turn the matter back over to you to provide us with some options.
Thank you, Madam Warren, Chair of the Council. So as you know, the existing committee is comprised of a mix of individuals. They can be appointees from the local councils, and they can also be public members. And so the committee is comprised of a mix of elected and public members right now. In terms of its functionality, the warden is correct. We did have a situation most recently where there were where a motion was brought forward, and it more or less was a tie vote. And as a result of that, the motion is actually lost, and it further complicated the discussion. So that's the history to where we are today. And preparing this report, I have the privilege of sitting on the rural planning directors group. And so I was able to canvass a lot of those members, and they came back with a lot of input, good input. And it's safe to say that throughout the province, most of the committees of adjustment or land division committees are comprised of 5 to 7 members. And they can be a mix too. Throughout the province, there is where you have council elected members, and you can have a full suite of public members as well. That would be option 2 in the report. And the third option is really a mix of 5 members, which would include the warden. County council could consider appointing the warden to that position each year as a 5th member to the committee. So with that, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions or comments about how to go forward? Councillor Fury.
Well, obviously, I don't think 4 works very well.
No.
That's kind of common sense. I think we should move forward and have the warden appointed as an ex officio. And of course, the option is you don't have to appoint a counselor. You can appoint someone at large. So I think there's options for like replacing you on Algonquin Highlands, which you guys will make the decision for. And I'm happy to move forward with that.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Well, I think the moving to 5 is the way to go. I don't necessarily think it should be the warden. I mean, it could be the warden, but I don't necessarily think that looking forward into the future, that the warden may not be somebody who's necessarily the best candidate for this position.
We're interested.
Or interested, whatever it may be. So I think I don't know about the idea of, right now, I believe that each of the municipalities appoints somebody. Could we have it that the 4 municipalities each appoint somebody and the county appoints somebody? Whether that person be the warden or a counselor or a private member, that gets us to 5, and it's a process by which to do it.
Well, there's absolutely, I mean, obviously the 4 municipalities already do that. There's no reason why the county can't put out a call for interested members of the public, no matter what part of the county they're from. And I mean, I have no strong feelings other than I'd like to see a 5th member. And who that is, it's entirely up to this group. I found it interesting that Mr. Bishop would suggest that he might be interested in doing something like this, although I'm not sure if there might be instances where there could be conflict with respect to that. I don't know that, going forward. But what does the council feel about putting out a call for a member countywide? Councillor Burton.
Well, it seems to make nothing but sense to me.
Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. So that's what we'll do. And the sooner that we can get that notice out, the better, and get the spot filled, so that we don't, it just seems like people are not as happy with life in general, and seem to be, there seem to be more conflicts every corner that we turn. And so the sooner we can get this resolved, the better. Could I have a mover and a secondary then to move in that direction? Councillors McKechnie and Carter.
Moved by Councillor, so I have changed it from the report, the resolution you see in your report. So moved by Councillor McKechnie, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that the March 22nd, 2023 planning report, PLN 26-2023, outlining an alternative structure for the Land Division Committee, be received for information by Haliburton County Council. That Haliburton County Council directs staff to advertise for a county representative and present a bylaw incorporating the changes to the structure of the Land Division Committee as directed.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, and finally, your last item is an update on the shoreline preservation bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Warden, rest of council. So this is, I guess, the final bylaw itself. And what I've done, what we've done as a staff team is actually had it reviewed by our legal counsel one more time. And in essence, the big changes to this bylaw, when you compare it to 4123, is that it'll be geographically applicable only to the 3 participating townships. And so it still retains the requirement for 20 meter buffer, still includes the requirement for wetlands, and it still is in full force in effect come April 1st. And with that, staff have presented the final bylaw to the 3 municipalities, and one has actually delegated their authority at this time, and we're hopefully early in April we'll have the 2 other resolutions to that effect. So thank you. Happy to answer questions.
And I believe that although the bylaw themselves haven't been passed in the other 2, you've received support and direction for the bylaw to be brought forward and tabled. Any questions? Hearing none, it's great to see that that we're able to continue to move forward. I've got to say, well, just as a comment for the public, that it's my understanding that the tree cutting bylaw remains in effect. It will remain in effect in Dysart at all. And it's just my hope that, you know, whatever steps Dysart decides to take, that your work will, to the greatest extent possible, dovetail with what the county is doing. So there's not too much conflict or misunderstanding. I know that there's a number of lakes that you know, you share with Highlands East, with ourselves, with Minden Hills. So, you know, the closer that we can align our directions, the better, to reduce any conflict. Did you have a comment, Councillor?
Yes, about that, the better. The legal better here. If you're adopting the whole thing, all the attachments are.
Your mic isn't on, Mary. Sorry, Councillor Ferry.
You're not adapting, so call me whatever you like.
Well, be careful there.
I like my,
Okay.
are you adopting all the attachments here then? Or just the first one?
It's my understanding we're adopting the attachments as well.
Okay, so I have,
Just to get clarification from Mr. Stone, that's correct.
Thank you, Madam Warren, to the rest of council. So yeah, it's to receive the report and the attachments are part of that report.
okay, so I have a question on the fines. How did the fines get approved?
Thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So in the case of the existing tree preservation bylaw, they were an amendment to that bylaw 3505. And we had to present the fine structure to the provincial court system, and the judge approved those. With regards to sort of next steps with the implementation of this shoreline bylaw, we'll have to do something similar. So with the approval of the bylaw by council today, we'll actually prepare a submission to the courts to get a fine structure established. So at the present time, if we had to enforce come April 1st, we come across a violation in one of the three, hopefully not one of the three townships, then we would have to do a Part 3 summons, which requires the person to appear in court.
Okay, so that's the provincial offenses then, is that what we're going on?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, that'll take a year, likely. Anyway, I just want to make sure that that we're going to try and mirror as close as we can to what the county's doing, but we have some different slants on it, obviously. And one of them is the way we collect money. So I just want to make sure that we're not tied to try not to be tied to the Provincial Offences Act, because I know how it works. And you know, it takes so
Or
long.
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. That's exactly right. So you know, we're looking at a different way of doing that, and maybe the county at some point wanted to do the same, I hope. But I just saw something where we could be locked into your fine. So I just want to make sure that if it's provincial offenses, I would like us to have a look at that. There's these administrative penalties that allow you to go outside that. I think some municipalities are using it now, so just like that to be pursued.
So thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So as recently as this past week, we've been discussing about preparing a submission to the courts, and the county forester advised the last time that he did it, it took just over a month to get the fine structure approved by the court system. So we're hopeful in that regard. And with regards to the existing tree preservation bylaw, that fine structure already exists today, and so we don't have to go to court to adjust those. So if Dysart proceeds just with the existing tree preservation bylaw, those fines are available for enforcement staff to act on. But it will take, as I said, as soon as we're done with the enacted bylaw today, we'll start that process with regards to the shoreline preservation bylaw, and hopefully we'll have a fine structure pretty soon.
I'll leave this alone, but I am concerned about it. So is the tree line shore preservation fines are not the same fines then as the violation for the shoreline preservation?
Thank you, Madam Warren. To rest of council, that is correct. So we have an existing fine structure that we can use part 3 summons, which is go to court and go for the high fine, which is $50,000, or the forester can actually go out and issue a ticket, and that's roughly 900 and change.
Yeah,
And that-
which isn't enough. So I guess the question is, if it's not a forestry related violation and it's somebody damaging the shoreline and in one of your townships, who levies that fine? You do as the staff?
Through you, Madam Warren, to rest of councils, those, so at the present time with the new bylaw, it will be a part 3 summons to court, which would be the judge would issue that. And
Okay, so the last in this subject is Dysart exempt from that? That's what I'm trying to get at.
through you, Madam Warren, insofar as that you're not a participating municipality, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
But I believe that the legal opinion we received from John Ewert said that because they were part of the original bylaw around shoreline tree preservation, if they no longer wanted the county involved in that, we needed a formal request from them to say, we no longer want to have, we basically want to take back the delegated authority we had provided in that area and do that in writing. Is that your understanding as well?
Through you, Madam Warden, to rest of council, yes, that's in his opinion. So that would be further discussions that we would have with the municipality, I would imagine.
Are there any other questions at this point? So I believe we have a resolution to receive the report and a separate resolution to pass the bylaw later in the agenda. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councilors Carter and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the planning report PLN 25-2023 entitled New Shoreline Preservation Bylaw as amended, and that staff be directed to present a bylaw for council's consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. And I believe we will take a break until 10:30. Welcome back, everyone. And my apologies to Councillor Shell. I think I missed your hand at one point, and I'll keep a closer eye. First, or the next item on the agenda is the correspondence listing. Are there any questions or comments about the correspondence? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence listing? Councillors Burton and Shell.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council acknowledges receipt of report CLK-06-2023 regarding correspondence listing for the period of January 16th, 2023 to March 9th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is a request for support from Peterborough County Council about a addiction services program proposal. Is there anyone who's going to speak to that, or just looking for questions and support?
Well, This went out to a number of municipalities, my belief is that they were hoping that there would be a financial contribution as well. I believe some of the other people that received it have just received it as information. And you know, obviously, if you were interested in supporting it financially, I'm sure you would want more information and we would arrange that. But I believe at least the city of Kawartha Lakes just received it as information. They didn't offer any financial contribution.
Well, and unfortunately, if it's a seeking financial support, it's something that maybe should have come to us a bit earlier in time. Does anybody have any comment that they'd like to make or desire to support this request? Hearing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the request for information? Councillors Sherry and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Ferry, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that the February 15th, 2023 correspondence from Peterborough County regarding the residential addiction services program proposal be received as information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next on the agenda for discussion is the single tier waste management service delivery review. And unfortunately, Robert Sutton is not with us today due to illness. But I believe Mr. Watson from Dysart et al. Is here. If you wanted to speak to this, you're welcome to come forward.
Good morning. So as County Council is aware, the 4 lower tier municipalities in conjunction with the county has been working on a extension of the service delivery review. The county issued a request for proposals. 2 bidders bid on the work, and this is to investigate a way to optimize waste management within the county at a single tier level. And so the report speaks to the proponent that was selected through the collaborative RFP process.
Are there any questions of Mr. Watson about the proposal? Councillor Carter.
Yeah, just to clarify, so this was, we had sent something out and it didn't, not everybody responded or people didn't respond in the right way and we went back out. Could just give us back a little bit more history so we can get up to speed.
Yes, so initially the county had issued a request for proposal in last year. We had a single bidder at that point. Unfortunately, they weren't able to meet one of the requirements of that bid. And so we reissued the RFP, or the county reissued the RFP. And this time we had 2 bidders come back on the work, offering their expertise.
Councillor Ferry.
What's the total cost of this?
The total cost comes under $50,000, I believe, which is 50% is covered by the county, and the 4 lower tier municipalities are covering the other percentage in equal parts. And all 4 of the lower municipalities and the county had budgeted this appropriately in its 2023 budgets.
Go ahead with the follow-up.
Okay, follow up. What are we hoping to achieve here? Are we looking to for one, the upper tier to administer all the landfills? Or are we looking for opportunities, for instance, if we have a landfill that's close to another landfill and they've got lots of space of sharing? Or what exactly are we going to come out of this with?
Well,
that's unfair to you, Jim.
Well, I think there's a hope that the consultant will be able to come back with a recommendation on how waste management can be delivered in the county. Even today, we have a blue box meeting, and only 2 of the municipalities have staff who are able to really attend that. Waste management is becoming increasingly complex and expensive, and there can be ways to optimize the system more, whether it be sharing landfills or standardizing our acceptable materials, fees, things like that. And that may be easier to achieve at a single tier level of government or a service delivery board. This is what the consultant will be researching to figure out what the best option would be for lower tier municipalities in the county to consider.
As Councillor Ferry commented, I too was wondering about whether there's sufficient view in this RFP for it to look at both all in or some lower tier sharing. That, I mean, it might work for, say, Dysart et al. And Highlands East working together, but maybe wouldn't work for Minden Hills and Algonquin Highlands, or maybe there would be something that Minden Hills and Algonquin Highlands could share in that wouldn't necessarily work for the other two, that we would hope to see that sort of information come back.
Yeah, so in some of the data gathering that the consultant will be doing, they'll be looking at all the different assets and liabilities that the 4 lower tier municipalities have in regards to waste management. There are different scenarios that you see across Ontario where in some instances, all of waste management is maybe at one level of government. In others, you have a split where maybe disposal is at the lower tier and waste diversion, such as recycling hazardous waste, is at an upper tier municipal level. So there's different scenarios and models that the consultant will be looking at, and will be making a recommendation for lower tiers in the county council to explore.
Further questions, Councillor Dayoud and Burton?
It sounds really good. Looking forward to seeing the outcome. It also sounds very current day processes driven. Is there any scope for the consultant to look at a longer term waste diversion strategy, or even identifying the very beginning step of how the county might work together to really focus in on long-term waste diversion?
The proponent that is recommended in this RFP has even identified organics as an area of waste diversion that should be explored at the county level. And again, there'd be cost efficiencies and savings if we're able to work collaboratively or at a single tier to implement that sort of waste diversion programs. That's part of this, yes.
Councillor Burton?
I know originally in I'll say the study that it was mentioned just the possible of sharing landfills, and then one it was actually Dysart and Highlands East, but that model's there with what we've done with Minden, as well as what you created for Highlands East with Dysart. The models there.
Yes. In landfill sharing, we definitely have examples from all the lower municipalities where that exists. Sometimes there's ECA compliance, environmental compliance approval restrictions or abilities to make that happen. But this, I think, is also looking administratively. Are there ways that contracts, whether it be your collection or processing contracts, staffing levels, are there ways to harmonize this, standardize it across the entire county?
Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I was just wondering with this committee or with the county here, is there any talk at all about incinerating our garbage together like in the county?
As part of this RFP, incineration hasn't been explored because that hasn't been a direction of county council or the lower tiers to explore further. We do know historically that the waste tonnages generated by a single lower tier municipality in the county and even the entire 4 municipalities together don't generate enough garbage to warrant or to facilitate or make feasible the installation of a incinerator within our jurisdiction. But I think if councils are interested in exploring incineration, that is an option. Advocating to AMO and Roma and Municipal Waste Association, looking at ways that the waste shed could be explored with other municipalities and counties around us as well.
So you're saying that they've checked out and there's not a small enough incinerator that could be built in the county here. Like they're all the size of Durham. Is that what you're saying?
In Canada, the smallest incinerator is the one that's built in Durham region. It's the same size as the one that's in Peel region. The amount of material that they require is quite substantial to make them operate. They're also located close to major highways to make shipping of garbage accessible. And just the environmental assessment for the one in Durham cost $29 million. The capital cost was like $292 million. And the annual operating cost is in the $16 million range. So it is definitely a major cost barrier potentially for our county to be exploring. But it is something that needs to be looked at. And I think in this RFP, potentially we could look at ways of managing waste into the future.
I just still can't get my head around that there's somebody building a smaller incinerator Like other countries all over the world of incinerating garbage. They're not all the size of Durham, I'm sure. To me, it's the only way that we're gonna be able to really solve this waste problem. It's not going away. Thank you.
This is, I believe if the council agreed as a whole that they wanted, further investigation into that, I mean, I think it sounds like there's suggestions that it's not feasible at this time, but if we wanted it to be investigated further, we could ask for that to be added to the RFP at some point in time. I think we need a little bit of further exploration into that, but Councillor Carter?
Yeah, I think obviously this is both an expensive and a dynamic environment that we're in, particularly with Blue Box and so on. And other than John, we don't have an awful lot of experience and or people who are working in this area that have been around for a long time to know the history of what's going on here. So I think this is one of the areas we're getting in a consultant to get us to a similar base and a full review of what's going on out there. I think this is probably money well spent.
Further questions or comment? I'd like to thank you, John. I know you kind of got put on the spot today, but I think you've done an admirable job of responding to our inquiries. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive this report, move forward? Councillor Dayu and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on the single tier waste management service delivery review RFP results. That Haliburton County Council directs staff to enter into an agreement with Dillon Consulting Limited for the provision of a service delivery model for single tier waste management services within the county of Haliburton. And finally, that staff be directed to present a bylaw authorizing the warden and the clerk to execute the said agreement on behalf of the county of Haliburton.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. Next up is a report on the agreements, ATV agreements for the rail trail, use of the rail trail. Sylvain Cloutier will be standing in for Mr. Sutton today. Morning, Sil.
Morning, Warden Danielson and members of council. This report is in regards to our annual renewal of the ATV Association agreements in order to be able to use our county rail trail. I don't know if there's any questions in regards to the report.
Any questions? A pretty standard, Councillor Carter.
I really just don't know a lot about the history here. But in reading this, we have one group that is contributing monies towards it and the other group doesn't. And that's one of my questions, why? And then two, my second question is, why are we dealing with both of these groups?
Well, the agreement started back in 2015 to formalize the associations to be able to legally use the rail trail. Since then, the agreement has been perpetual every year. It's brought back to council. Now, in regards to one association paying for specific services and the other one not, that I really can't answer that question right now, but I could.
The trails are actually like it continues through Haliburton all the way through the city of Kawartha Lakes. So the Kawartha group, they support the Kawartha Lakes section and the Haliburton group support our section, but they are connected. So Haliburton doesn't support city of Kawartha Lakes for maintenance of their part of the trail and vice versa. So it really is just because they're our home club that they support financially here, and Kawartha does that in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Because the trail runs through both.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments about these agreements? They're standard, been in place for years.
I should say too, if I could, they, Kawartha have a, like a trail, I forget the word, almost like a, an enforcement mechanism where they do education along the trail. If someone's using it inappropriately, speeding, other things they do. And they've been really, really useful for us because we have such limited bylaw enforcement capacity for that work. They have spent a fair amount of time on the trail last year. I think that started last year, almost as a trail steward, helping make sure that it's used responsibly, and where that isn't the case, providing some education and other things. So they have been a very good partner, even if they aren't a financial partner. They've done a lot of really good things to support our work.
Councillor Carter.
So, okay, on that, then, the $12,000, is the $12,000 pay for what it is that needs to be done? Or, you know, is the county subsidizing this? I have no idea how much it costs to do this dust control and these routine maintenance.
It's been part of the budget for years, and this is their contribution to assist in that. I don't know that there's been any real equation to the amounts of money that they contribute.
Well, the $12,000 essentially covers the application of dust suppressant in certain areas along the rail line. So because they produce dust when they use the rail trail, so that's. And this is a really good news story. They are proposing to double their contribution this year, so it's gone from 6 to 12 to 12.
Any other questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with the agreements? Councillor McKechnie, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor McKechnie, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received for information the March 22nd, 2023 staff report, 2023 Haliburton County Rail Trail ATV agreements, and that staff be directed to present a bylaw authorizing the warden and CAO clerk to execute the agreements.
All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Next on the agenda is an update on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And Sue Tiffin, who's coordinating the work for Community Safety and Wellbeing, will be joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning, Warden Danielson and members of council. It's very good to see you all again. So before you is a report on the Haliburton County Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, including an update on what's been happening since my last report to council in the fall of 2022. While some of you were members of the steering committee or the last term council that led the creation of this plan, as a reminder and for the public tuning in, I would like to take a moment to properly introduce our plan to you. Bear with me as I read from my notes here. This is a complex plan and I don't want to miss anything. Next slide, please. So first, what is this Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan? The Safer Ontario Act 2018 mandated that each municipality in the province prepare and adopt a community safety and wellbeing plan. We are all proud of where we live, but there are friends and neighbors struggling in our community due to some of the key factors that contribute to poor community safety and wellbeing, including social factors such as poverty and income levels, food insecurity, health and mental health, social isolation, substance use disorder, or what we commonly refer to as addiction, and homelessness. CSWB plans bring together partners in police services, municipal governments, local agencies, and organizations representing health, mental health, education, community social services, children youth services, as well as residents, and serve as a roadmap for how partners across different sectors can work together to make the community a safer, more inclusive place where all residents thrive. The Ministry of the Solicitor General has identified some of the benefits of these plans as an increase in understanding of risks, enhanced communication and collaboration, increased coordination and access to services, and the reduction in reliance on acute incident responses such as emergency department visits and police service calls. Our plan aims to address the real everyday needs of our community by improving alignment across our key service providers, integrating data collection and information to better understand and measure progress, supporting vulnerable communities as they access information and services, and ensuring that we are continuously engaging with our community and interested parties to align this plan with the real everyday needs of our community members. Next slide, please. The legislation required that the plan identify and prioritize community risk factors, identify strategies to reduce the prioritized risk factors, include a sustainable system to monitor, evaluate, and report on the effect of the plan, be reviewed and revised at regular intervals, be supported by an advisory committee with legislative membership, and be prepared and adopted by January 1st, 2021. I want to note here that some communities were part of pilot projects many years ago, and also that many plans throughout the province, including our own, were adopted later than that initial deadline due to the onset of the pandemic. Next slide, please. So CSWB plans focus on social development, prevention, risk intervention, and incident response, marking a shift in focus from a reactive, responsive-based approach to a more proactive, holistic approach to community safety. I'll speak to this more in discussing how the plan was developed. Next slide, please. The ultimate goal of community safety and well-being planning is to achieve sustainable communities where everyone is safe, has a sense of belonging and opportunities to participate, and where individuals and families can meet their needs for education, healthcare, food, housing, income, and social and cultural expression. The CSWB planning process recognizes the work already complete in our community and already underway to address areas of risk in our community and support safety and well-being by very committed partners and organizations. So the aim of the CSWB plan is not to duplicate efforts underway, but to support and complement this work and address gaps. We will align our work to build on and strengthen these efforts. Next slide, please. So a bit about how the planning worked in our community. And the next slide, please. The Ontario CSWB planning framework focused on collaboration, information sharing, and performance measurement, and identified 4 areas in which communities can be made safer and healthier. I'll share the province's notes on those 4 areas. On the inside is incident response, or the red. This area represents what is traditionally thought of when referring to crime and safety. It includes immediate and reactionary responses that may involve a sense of urgency, like police, fire, emergency medical services, a child welfare organization taking a child out of their home, a person being apprehended under the Mental Health Act, or a school principal expelling a student. When someone is struggling, this is the point at which often a team of professionals come in to help mitigate situations because there is an elevated risk of harm. Many communities invest a significant amount of resources into incident response, and although it is important and necessary, it is reactive, and in some cases, or some instances, enforcement dominated. Initiatives in this area alone cannot be relied upon to increase community safety and well-being. I recently read that the police chief of Edmonton said, the idea is that we cannot arrest our way out of these problems. We need to get to the source and address the root causes. Next is risk intervention, or yellow. Planning in the risk intervention area involves multiple sectors working together to address situations where there is an elevated risk of harm, stopping something bad from happening right before it is about to happen. Risk intervention is intended to be immediate and prevent an incident, whether it is a crime, victimization, or harm from occurring, while reducing the need for and systemic reliance on incident response. Collaboration and information sharing between agencies on things such as types of risk has been shown to create partnerships and allow for collective analysis of risk-based data, which can inform strategies in the prevention and social development areas. While this is more proactive than the red bullseye, municipalities and their partners generally should be focusing their efforts on developing and/or enhancing strategies in the prevention area to ensure that individuals do not reach the point of requiring an immediate risk intervention. That prevention area, blue, is next. Planning in the area of prevention involves proactively implementing evidence-based situational measures, policies, or programs to reduce locally identified priority risks to community safety and well-being before they result in crime, victimization, and/or harm. In this area, community members who are not specialists in safety and well-being may have to be enlisted depending on the priority risk, such as business owners if the risk is retail theft, and property managers if the risk is occurring in their building. And while planning in this area is important, municipalities and their partners generally should be focusing their efforts on developing and/or enhancing strategies in the social development area to ensure that risks are mitigated before they become a priority that needs to be addressed through prevention. So social development is our green ring. Social development requires long-term, multidisciplinary efforts and investments to improve the social determinants of health. So the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, and age, such as education, early childhood development, food security, quality housing, etc., and thereby reduce the probability of harm and victimization. Specifically, social development is where a wide range of sectors, agencies, and organizations bring different perspectives and expertise to the table to address complex social issues like poverty from every angle. Social development in action will be realized when all community members are aware of the services available to them and can access those resources with ease. Haliburton County CSWB plan consists of strategies and actions that fall within the 4 levels of intervention while focusing our collective efforts on social development and prevention. Ultimately, the goal is to reduce the need for expensive reactive incident response by addressing underlying issues. Next slide, please. Over the past 2 years, the county, on behalf of its member municipalities of Algonquin Highlands, Dysart et al., Highlands East, and Minden Hills, worked collaboratively with many committed organizations, agencies, and people with lived experience to co-design this plan. The plan was developed through consultation and research in 2021 and approved by County Council in January 2022, with lower tier municipalities approving that same plan in February. Next slide, please. This slide acknowledges the original steering committee and original champions of this plan, those who served on the previous term of council, and acting OPP Detachment Commander Dan Collins, service providers, the advisory table, and members of the public, all who worked with Strategy Corps, a consultant well-versed in CSWB planning, in developing our plan. The conversations around that planning that were publicly available at the time they occurred have been archived on a CSWB landing page currently available on the county website. Next slide, please. During development of the plan, ensuring the community's voice and experiences were reflected in the plan was a priority, and public consultation occurred with service providers and organizations and the general public through a public survey, service provider community survey, and focus groups. That being said, ongoing community engagement remains a priority going forward. Next slide, please. So our priority focus areas. And the next slide, please. As we think about the priorities of our plan and community safety and well-being work, I wanted to show this image from Public Health Sudbury and District, as it's a visual representation of upstream approaches and what prevention might look like. And I want to thank the Bruce Gray CSWBP coordinator for sharing this idea. So we know that at some points in life, or sometimes for years in life, or sometimes again and again, some people fall into the river. Maybe it was us, maybe it was someone we know, maybe it was someone who lived down the street from us. Pulling people from the water downstream might save them in that moment, but it doesn't address the conditions that cause them or are causing them to fall into the river. We can build a hospital next to the river. We can make sure our EMS is there to support and help, but it still doesn't address those conditions. The goals and strategies within our plan are about being proactive rather than reactive, coordinating at the earliest stage of intervention where possible, and finding ways to prevent people from falling in the river in the first place so they don't experience harmful outcomes. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the high-level findings presented to the steering committee during the course of planning. They are housing and homelessness, poverty, public transportation, Indigenous support, mental health, substance use and addiction, elder care, service system navigation and fragmentation, and climate change. Next slide, please. And from those high-level findings, these are our 4 priorities. We also have 12 goals and 25 strategies connected to these priorities in Haliburton County's plan. So our priorities are housing and homelessness, poverty and employment, mental health, substance use and addiction, healthcare and system access. Each of these priority areas do not exist in isolation from one another. These priorities, for the most part, are the focus of many CSWB plans around the province. So we're not alone in facing these issues, and we're not alone in not having the solutions yet. And in fact, we're all in this together, but the issues will look different in each region, and so will the solutions. It should be noted that this plan is a living document, and there is always opportunity to adjust goals and strategies. For each priority, the advisory table connected to this plan is working to identify or establish working groups to support the goals and strategies of each of our priority areas. These could be groups that already exist, whose work plans or a piece of their work plan aligns with our goals and strategies, or it could be a new group developed. But the idea is not to create a new group if a group already exists, as we want to avoid duplication. The working groups will report back to the advisory committee. Next slide, please. So in no particular order, our priority focus areas, housing and homelessness. Our goals are align policy areas, desired outcomes and impacts, and key activities across existing programs and initiatives to the City of Kawartha Lakes and the County of Haliburton Housing and Homelessness Plan. Goal number 2, increase wraparound support for community members struggling to access housing. Goal number 3, continue to support service provider collaboration and information sharing. And just a note that when we do have working groups in place, goal number 1 might not be the first goal that they work on, or they might identify an emerging goal that we need to address. So this is what we have as our plan right now, but as I mentioned, it is a living document. Next slide, please. Poverty and employment. So our 3 goals are to increase access to and advocate for improved employment opportunities for low-income groups, elevate existing service integration and information sharing efforts to alleviate poverty across key axes such as housing, transit, food, and energy, and identify innovative opportunities to address food insecurity through closed-loop referral processes. Next slide, please. Mental health, substance use, and addiction. Our goals are to increase access to and awareness of mental health and addiction support services, co-design and develop experience-based mental health and addiction and substance use support services and programs, and improve education awareness and information sharing on substance use and addiction, harm reduction, and mental health. I do want to note that the advisory table has identified a potential working group for this priority, and we're working on a terms of reference so we can best work in partnership. And next slide, please. Healthcare and system access. Increase awareness on the importance of movement and increase access to active transportation as a central mode of mobility where applicable. Develop a health equity working group to support equal access to health across priority groups such as low income, BIPOC or Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQIA+, and seniors. And enhance and expand service scope of virtual care for health and mental health in the county. Next slide, please. Each of our priority areas are underpinned by critical enablers, so supports or activities that are necessary to facilitate the success of any proposed initiatives, and risk factors, or something that increases the likelihood of failure of any proposed initiatives. Next slide, please. And a performance measurement framework will focus on the intended outcomes of these strategies and activities, including inputs, activities, outputs, immediate and intermediate outcomes, and long-term outcomes. Corresponding indicators will then need to be mapped out and sustainable data collection methods identified. Some outcomes will be evident immediately after activities are implemented, and some will take more time to achieve. We also need to recognize that while there will be some quick action to take, change can take time. As the North Bay CSWB coordinator passed along to me from an elder, if it takes 10 days to walk into a forest, it takes 10 days to walk out. Next slide, please. And regarding our implementation, the next slide. This governance model shows an example of how we will work, keeping in mind that our working groups might look different. There might be more than one working group per priority, for example, to address priorities. And our data stewardship working group might not just be made up of people who sit on those working groups, but also from people throughout different sectors in the community who have access to data and can share it. Next slide, please. Our advisory table is made up of leaders representing sectors including healthcare, education, police services, and municipal government, who are subject matter experts on community safety and well-being related issues. Those partners help shape the plan and now ensure its strategic direction, offering their expertise, support, and guidance both at the table and as champions of the plan in the community. The table ensures outcomes are established and responsibilities for measurement are in place, ensure the right agencies and organizations and participants are designated for each goal, and think about ways in which the underlying structures and systems currently in place can be improved upon to better enable service delivery. The table has met collectively 3 times since my last report to council. In that time, we have discussed and reviewed our priorities, a proposed community engagement work plan for me, and the identification or establishment of working groups to support the goals and strategies of each of our priority areas. Next, we'll be developing a detailed implementation plan, establishing a data stewardship group, identifying existing initiatives and strategies which align with community safety and well-being, and developing a mechanism to ensure the table is responsive to emerging needs. The table plans to track progress with monitoring and evaluation through robust data collection and data sharing, and will report regularly to council. Next slide, please. So I joined the county in July 2022. This is a role that is a jack of all trades, or, some people have noted it's a blank slate because it's a new position at the county. And in fact, throughout the province, some regions did hire a CSWB coordinator. Some people are working on the plan off the corner of their desk. Some people haven't had the time to really look at their plans since it was submitted to the province. My actual job description really is fluid. I plan and coordinate advisory table meetings, prepare documents for those meetings, plan community engagement sessions, receive and respond to requests for information about the plan, attend community meetings and one-on-one discussions, as well as meetings with CSWBP coordinators throughout the province, look for ways in which collaboration can happen, and bring all of that back to the advisory table, to the community, and to council. I don't have any authority over any of our partners or community agencies, so I can't tell anyone how to run the hospital or the school or how counseling services should be provided, nor do I want to, but I can make connections between people and services. Felix Munger, the executive director of the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, recently told Kenora Council that CSWB coordinators are responsible for bringing the key players together for change instead of the change itself. The county, he said, convenes not as a leader, but to bring people together on a regular basis that can make decisions. And we won't necessarily solve every problem. We may just play a support role. So I can look at challenges in our community with a community safety and well-being lens. I can offer backbone support, and I can listen to residents, which has given me opportunities to understand what's happening in the community and where there might be opportunities for us to change something or make something better. I do want to thank folks in the community who have already reached out to me with ideas and suggestions and concerns, and to councillors who have already been championing the plan and connecting folks in need to me. That's very much appreciated. Next slide, please. In the upcoming months, I look forward to reporting to council further on our plan's implementation framework and plan evaluation framework, or whatever you tell me that you need to hear an update on. Today, I am sharing with you some of the ways in which we hope to share our community safety and well-being plan and increase understanding of the need for CSWB initiatives overall with the community. I just want to note, I cannot be more proud of or exhilarated by the enthusiasm from our community. People are tired, they're dealing with staff shortages and sickness and trying to help lift others up while getting through the days themselves. But when I've approached anyone about these initiatives, they've not only found a way to run with an idea, but in true Haliburton County spirit, they've made it bigger. So one of the ideas I want to share is a CSWB youth art exhibition. And I want to thank Susan at Kawartha Art Gallery in the city of Kawartha Lakes for her sharing. This could be a collaboration with the Limbic Art Collective, Rails and Gallery, Youth Hub, and area schools. Right now, it looks like an online art exhibition inviting area youth aged 12 to 24 to express their thoughts on Haliburton County's CSWB plan priorities. So the housing and homelessness, poverty and employment, mental health, substance use and addiction, and healthcare system access through creative avenues. The online exhibition will live on Rails and Gallery's website and be curated in part by members of the Limbic Art Collective. As well, the Limbic Art Collective suggested that it be more than that in terms of making sure that we really hear youth and what their feelings are about the Haliburton County Community Safety Wellbeing Plan and the challenges within. So we can offer a survey online to receive more of their feedback, which I can share with the advisory table, and that can lead some of the direction of the plan moving forward. Who to call cards were a community member recommendation. So this is a one-page directory of quick access resources for frontline service workers, including teachers, elected officials, etc., to provide to people in need or after a traumatic event. Thank you to Councillor Carter for sharing a similar resource he had picked up in the South Georgian Bay area, or the resource was from South Georgian Bay area. I believe Councillor Carter wasn't necessarily in that area at the time. First Responders Day is about honoring first responders on May 1st, which is the provincial day to honor first responders. This could look like a one-day open house in each municipality celebrating first responders on First Responders Day and inviting residents to stations or a mobile spot to learn more about services and programs offered. This is a collaboration between community emergency management coordinators, and a big shout out as well to Amy Brome, of course. Service Providers Networking Workshop is looking at co-creating a day with the YWCA and with feedback from the Haliburton County Service Providers Network. This would be designed for service providers. It could be a community information fair, a day for networking and reconnecting between themselves and counselors. A volunteer fair was recommended to me in a late night email from a community member. So the idea is that we'll ask the Haliburton County Service Providers Network what they would like and see how we can arrange a day for them. Service club presentations have begun. So I'm introducing the CSWB plan to local service providers. I began with Minden Rotary Club this week, which of course was a fantastic time. A one-stop online hub is an idea that came up through the last term council. It's a one-stop online community hub or information portal to share the CSWB plan and CSWB plan updates. It could have a complete community directory and services listing, event calendar, asset map, data dashboard, program and strategy catalog, and it's an opportunity for resident feedback and CSWB connection. I know myself looking for services and programs throughout the community. I find it difficult sometimes, even when I know what I'm looking for, or I sometimes find myself on a page, I'm not sure if it's within Haliburton County, if it's within City of Kawartha Lakes, or I'm not sure if it's been updated. So if we had something that could help for those residents who prefer online research, if we could just lead them to one spot, I think that would be really helpful in being able to share what information, what services, what organizations are out there. A community resource guide would be the paper version of the one-stop online hub. So I'll be coming back to council soon as well with a report on potential initiatives involving a small neighborhood grant program and a community dinner event. Next slide, please. The goal of community safety and well-being planning is to achieve sustainable communities where everyone is safe, has a sense of belonging and opportunities to participate, and where individuals and families can meet their needs for education, healthcare, food, housing, income, and social and cultural expression, as I noted. The success of the plan itself is not linked to any one person, organization, or sector, but the success of our community is linked to the well-being of each and every individual. And integral to this success is cross-sector service coordination, community involvement, and taking a collaborative approach to creating safer communities. It's important to note that the plan doesn't only apply to those who participated in planning or to service providers, but to everyone in the community. There really is something that everyone can do, and I can't stress that enough. While we refer to this as being a county plan, it really truly is a complete community plan. Next slide, please. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on what has been happening with our CSWB plan and what will be happening as we move forward with implementation and introducing the plan to the community. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, Sue. We know that you've taken on a really complicated and challenging project, and I think you're probably very well suited to take on this role. I love the sound of the work that, it's great to hear the details that you provided. I really love the sound of the youth exhibition that's being planned, and particularly the online hub and access to information for the public. But I'd look to members of council for questions about the presentation. Councillor Dayu.
Thanks very much, Sue. I like lots of what you presented, and I like the tangible next steps that you've outlined at the end. That helps to get a grip on the direction in which we're heading in on a very local basis. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on that with some of your own reflections on how to take some of these lofty and very important goals and make them tangible and monitorable at the Haliburton level. So, for example, I'm looking at under healthcare and system access goals, goal number 11, develop a health equity working group to support equal access to health across priority groups. Goal 12, enhance and expand service scope of virtual care for health and mental health in the county. Like these are huge things that touch on mainly, I would think, provincial agencies. So how does this team find something tangible and make it implementable for us here in Haliburton?
Sure. So within the plan, which I don't actually have open, we do have some strategies and we do have a potential work plan that a working group could work toward in order to make these, sort of Haliburton based and break down what are obviously huge goals and make them more sort of pieces that we can look at within the community. We do have partners as well who are working on some of these goals already. So it's not necessarily about reinventing the wheel or creating some, taking this goal and finding out where to start. Some people are actually working on some of these ideas. And so if we can align with those groups, then we can help sort of impact them on a local level. There is also the Ontario Health Team. As we know, they're working really hard on their own goals, many of which align with our CSWV plan. And I think it's really about listening to those groups once they're identified and looking at what they think is possible. And I mean, they know the history of this area. They know what has worked and what hasn't worked before. So sort of, ensuring that they have the autonomy to create their work plan and bring that back to the advisory table. And then for us to figure out how we can support them. Maybe it is advocating at a provincial level, or to see how we can help with in-kind support, or to see how we can help with data collection, because especially, when we talk about local strategies, data collection has been challenging for a lot of people. It's been difficult to look at what we have available here when it's sort of combined with other areas as well. And so all of that sort of works together to help create what, although they're big goals, we can break them down into smaller pieces to see what strategies we can work on.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Sue, for your work on this. This is an awful lot like the old adage of how do you eat an elephant. There's so much going on, and this is so large, and I think we just have to look and break it down into all of its components and get the many people who are working on various segments or various parts of these issues to work together and to just make this a safer community and a community that has, as you say, improved well-being. So I guess we just have to roll up our sleeves and get to it. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Carter.
Councillor McKechnie. Oh, sorry. Any other questions? Thanks so much, Sue. Good luck with your continued efforts.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Can I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillors Carter and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the March 22nd, 2023 staff report on community safety and well-being plan update.
All in favor? That's carried. Next on the agenda are the reports and minutes from external boards and agencies. First is from the health unit, and Councillor Royale offers his apologies today as he's not available, and he will bring us all up to date at our next meeting. Anything from point in time, Councillor McKechnie?
Yes. Accreditation update, board of directors continues to review. Sorry. The accreditation update. The board of directors continues to review policies and preparations for upcoming accreditation in 2024. Policy review continues with excellent progress. The Youth Hub has been partnering with your outdoors to provide land-based activities for youth. We were able to take youth to participate in predator prowl and look forward to participating in basic fire skills and more in the summer. In partnership with the University of Toronto and an artist, Nolia Marzella, we will begin work on 2 pieces of artwork that will be placed on the outdoors of the Youth Hub building. We've been working with Peterborough Regional Hospital, Ross Memorial Hospital, Haliburton Highlands Health Services on mapping service pathways for adolescents. It has been a busy month in terms of pre-budget work. Marge, which part of the CMHO group that met with Minister Thibodeau, to speak about recruiting and retention issues. He shared the importance of getting messages out to other members of the legislature as well. 3 board members and Mard met with MPP Lori Scott about the need for increased funding for the children with youth and youth mental health. The mental health pandemic is continuing with higher demand than ever. The mental health and substance use working group, of which Point Time is founding member, was recently the recipient of a United Way collaborative matching grant. We received $10,000 from United Way, as well as matching funds from the Community Living, Canadian Mental Health Association, and Human Services, City of Kawartha Lakes. Thanks to all for helping us to continue this program. The Mental Health and Substance Use Working Group is hosting an upcoming 3-part community education series on April 18th online, May 16th online, and June 27th in person. Registration for these events is free and open to service providers and members of the public wanting to get involved in fostering a compassionate and evidence-based approach to substance use and mental health in Haliburton County. For more information on how to register, visit www.pointtime.ca. And that was not my report, but I was there.
But it's lots of good information for us. Thank you very much. Next is the report on the Warden's Caucus, and I'm going to have to rely on a lot of scribbled notes here, but you will get a formal report followed up in our agenda in a future agenda package. We spent 2 days in beautiful downtown Napanee. I was actually blown away by their council chambers. It's the most beautiful historic council chambers, and just interesting to see, the historic aspect in some communities. One of the first presentations on our first day was from FCM, the Federation of Municipalities, and normally I don't see them as being quite as related to us as as say AMO or Roma. But in this case, I thought that they really presented to us there was a real rural focus on some of the things that they talked to us about, which I found really, really interesting. They were, particularly looking at increasing funding for housing. They were looking at additional funding for water and wastewater projects. They wanted to see updated funding or upscaled funding for climate adaptation. They're seeking more funding for greater rural transportation and rural infrastructure, and also calling for a needs-based funding for rural internet. And they're also looking to have a greater engagement with rural municipalities than they've had in the past, which is really a good sign. And this was all in advance of the federal budget, so it's good to hear that they're looking at our priorities. And there was a lot of discussion about financing and how financing works and the greater need for financing and programs. One of the comments that they made were that a lot of municipalities were facing increases in taxation from anywhere between 9% and 13%, which is pretty extraordinary when we all try so hard to keep things at a minimum as best we can. But we don't have sufficient tax revenues to meet the challenges that we're facing with, and the challenges that, in fact, in my mind, the province puts forward for us. There was a lot of discussion, in particular, as I mentioned earlier, about advocating for communal water and sewer services and new models that we can move forward with to make housing projects in rural municipalities, particularly like Highlands East and Algonquin Highlands, where there's no service, there's some pipe services in Highlands East, but their challenges are greater for housing. We moved into a strategic planning session, which I have to honestly say was not quite as well run as maybe I had hoped for. But nevertheless, we had some great discussion amongst the wardens about what our priorities would be, and they don't vary greatly from what we've seen in the past. I mean, housing still remains at the absolute top. And again, more emphasis on the need for communal services and more ability for not-for-profit groups who want to do housing projects, because there's issues with them not being able to use donated land as equity in their projects. So, we're looking to do some advocacy in that regard. The need to advocate for tax credits, for projects that are updating older buildings, where there's some shortcomings in that regard, and also some advocacy with respect to borrowing rates and some of the models for funding that have such set deadlines and timelines that you can't meet, and the interest challenges that are associated, with being able to meet those, the banking challenges. And also there was a question raised about our ability to track the impact of recent legislation associated to housing. Because the legislation associated with rental, Landlord and Tenants Act, really are problematic with respect to housing as a whole. We also talked a certain amount about the definition of affordable housing. There seems to be some interesting crossovers between affordable and attainable, and okay, so exactly what do we mean here? And I think that we need to have some clarity with respect to that, so there be some discussion there. Other matters that we talked about were long-term care. There was a lot of municipalities have long-term care homes, and that doesn't affect us quite as much as it did others, but there are some real problems associated with that. And so there was considerable discussion about where we might go forward with advocacy and projects associated with long-term care. There was a lot of discussion about doctor recruitment and how, because everybody's having a problem. I was kind of shocked by, some of the numbers. I remember actually Mr. Pine was I think maybe in my first year as a member of county council, I was assigned to professional recruitment, and Hastings County had an excellent model that they were using. And I braved the den of his office, and, he really helped us and came forward with helping us with professional recruitment. But, since then, I think we needed we were short X number of doctors, and we hope to move forward, and we've had a lot of success in bringing doctors in, but our numbers are even lower than what they were when I started. And that just shows that, the challenge that we've got, and that, that there's a lot of barriers associated with recruiting doctors, and we want to do a lot of advocacy work to see where we can resolve some of those issues, as well as how we can seek funding for, say, things like nurses and nurse practitioners, and how they can help in that. There was a lot of discussion about advocating for almost every topic that we talked about hit on municipal funding formulas and how they worked with the province, and the things that we needed to do to try and see change with respect to how things are funded and how well they're funded. So there was a lot of discussion about that. And I think that all the other item that was a hot topic was paramedic services, and how we can resolve the issue of paramedic services, how we can ensure that, say, community paramedicine is continued to be funded and wholly funded, not shifted over to the 50-50 formula. So a lot of discussion about how we could move forward with that. Other than that, there was some updates from EORN on the number of towers and the amount of work that's been done. There have been a number of towers put into service, and a great number of co-locations and sites that are being worked on with respect to archaeological and natural heritage signs. There's an awful lot of complicated work that needs to be done before any of the sites can be approved. But I believe that EORN is going to be coming to an upcoming meeting soon to give us a detailed update. Anything that I may have missed or you'd like to add?
Not at all. That's great.
So that's it for me for now. Of course, if anybody's got any questions or wants to know more, I'll do my best to update them. Anything on the JAC committee?
The meeting for March was canceled because of spring break. It was in the middle of spring break and lots of people were going to be absent. The co-chair and I are meeting shortly to discuss the agenda for the next meeting, which will take place in April.
Okay, that's great. Next is the professional recruitment, and I confess that I don't have an awful lot to bring forward, except that I think that our coordinator attended a conference not too long ago and has had some success in garnering some interest in Haliburton County, which is good. We'll hear more about that. And I'm hoping that we get an actual update and report from her to bring forward soon. And next is the library board. Councillor Shell, is there anything that you can bring to the table?
I think it was the shortest library meeting of all time, so there really wasn't much to share with everyone today. So my apologies.
That's not your fault. One thing that I would like to mention is that I understand that the board has decided to move back to a 3 o'clock time as opposed to regular 4 o'clock meetings. And I'm concerned, now I could be mistaken, that may be just for one meeting, but I understood that there was a decision made to have all the meetings at 3 instead of 4. And I see that could continue to create conflicts for half of the board, because there are going to be times when we sort of run up against each other. And I wondered if that was adequately considered when that decision was made.
Well, I will speak to that's the time we had in the previous term of council was 3 p.m. and there was a few times when it, couldn't happen, especially during budget season, and we accommodated, but for the most part that seemed to work. Now moving forward, if it doesn't, obviously, I'm happy to do whatever. But there's a few, I guess, Councillor Dayu and Councillor Ryle, who may have difficulty getting back in time if the county meeting was to run a little bit longer. But again, we can discuss that moving forward. If it looks like a larger agenda, I don't see why we couldn't have it changed.
Okay, well, we'll just sort of see how that goes. And if it does run, it just happened that our next committee of the whole meeting, we will end up having a council meeting immediately after that. And there's an accessibility committee meeting after that, wherein the same 4 members on the library board are on the accessibility committee. So it's like, yikes. So we'll just kind of see how that flows.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is it for that section. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive those reports? Councilors Carter and Fury. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Fury. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the following: the February 10th, 2023 correspondence to Premier Ford re the province of Ontario's 2023 pre-budget consultation from Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit. The February 16th, 2023 approved minutes from the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit Board of Health meeting. The January 24th, 2023 approved minutes from the Point in Time Center for Children, Youth and Parents, and the February 8th, 2023 approved minutes from the Haliburton County Public Library Board.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, next is the land division report.
Thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So the committee did meet this past month. 2 applications were considered. 2 lots were approved. Thank you.
Any questions on the land division? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that report? Councillor Carter, Councillor Burton.
By Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the planning report entitled Land Division Activity Report for March 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Under other external boards and agencies, we have an update on good roads from Councillor Burton.
I don't really have an update other than we didn't have a meeting, but we are working, and I know our executive director maybe reached out to the Eastern Wardens Caucus at your last meeting. I believe he was there for some of the projects that we're doing. But we are busy working on our conference. It's interesting, the Premier has agreed that he will be in attendance, which is exciting for us. He couldn't make it last year. But we're just busy working on it. The numbers are way up. And I think the move with the conference, from moving it from February to April, has been a good move for us. We did it mainly because of COVID last year, and it seems to be quite a big hit with the people that come to it.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. My apologies for not mentioning that. We did have your executive director, Scott Butler, present to us. One of the things that he did talk about was a plan that Good Roads has got to try and reduce liability for all of its members, which will be interesting to see the results of that. And some work, some continued work on joint and several liability, I understand. Not sure about the levels of success. Good luck is all I can say. You know, we've looked to that every year for I don't know how many years now, and we're not getting much response. And the other item that he raised or talked about was that they're going to be doing a safety auditing guide for roads and a registry for Ontario road safety auditors, which, you know, they'll be reporting back to us, and they're also offering some courses on determining road and road safety barriers. With respect to the EORN update, you'll see in the agenda package that the numbers that I didn't give you are there for your information. Do we need a resolution to receive that?
No.
Okay.
You might want to mention, I think there was an appointment to the board or an election to the board.
Oh, I forgot. I've formally now been appointed to the Eastern Ontario Regional Network Board, which I'm really excited about, particularly with this housing project and how important it is to us all. I think that's you know, continuing to keep an eye on their existing projects and being involved there, but the housing is part of it, is what really does excite me. So looking forward to that, and I'll keep you all informed. And I understand there is another local member who is hoping to continue on the board as a public member. We'll see about the results of that. He is an existing member of the board. Anything on poverty reduction? Okay. Under other business, one item is the April calendar. Are there any errors or omissions that anybody has noted? Okay, and unfortunately, we cannot move forward once again with the election of our deputy warden because we had all agreed that we would like to see us all present for that, and that isn't the case today. So that item is deferred. So the last item under that section is the affirmation of municipal representation on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee, which would be Councillor Royale. Do you have a resolution there?
I do.
Could I have a mover and a seconder there to affirm that appointment, Councillor McKechnie and Burton?
Moved by Councillor McKechnie, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council acknowledges receipt of the February 8th, 2023 correspondence from the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Region, requesting municipal representation on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee, and that Haliburton County Council endorse the Township of Highlands East Deputy Mayor Cecil Ryle as the Kawartha Haliburton Municipal Representative on the said committee.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no closed session. So we are then into approval of the bylaws. So the first bylaw is the agreement with Drain Brothers for hot mix for this year. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillors Carter. Seconder, Councillor Fury.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Fury. Be it resolved that bylaw 4160 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Drain Brothers Excavating Limited for the 2023 hot mix road rehabilitation projects on various sections of county roads be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. The next is the agreement with Miller Paving for surface treatment for this year. Oh, sorry, mover and a seconder, Councillor Carter. Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that bylaw 4161 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Miller Paving Limited for the surface treatment of various sections of county roads be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the agreement to rehabilitate the Goodrem Bridge. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Burton, Councillor Carter.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that bylaw 4162 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Urban Link Civil Limited for the rehabilitation of the Goodrem Bridge be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. The next is an agreement with Tormont Cat for acquisition of a backhoe. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillors Carter and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that bylaw 4163 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Tormont Cat for the supply of one tractor backhoe be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is an agreement to acquire a new pickup truck from Haliburton Chrysler Dodge. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillors Carter and McKechnie.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that bylaw 4164 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Haliburton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Limited for the supply of one pickup truck be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a bylaw to amend the rate of speed. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillors Burton and Councillor Shell. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw 4165 being a bylaw to amend the County of Haliburton speed limit bylaw number 3392, which prescribes a rate of speed for motor vehicles on certain roads under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the County of Haliburton, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the bylaw to authorize the agreements with the ATV associations. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillors Dayu and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that bylaw 4166 being a bylaw to authorize the warden and clerk to execute an agreement for the use of the Haliburton County Rail Trail with Haliburton All-Terrain Vehicle Association and other provincial past members under the direct supervision of the Haliburton All-Terrain Vehicle Association be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And second is the agreement with the Kawartha ATV Association. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillors Carter and Shell.
Moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw 4167 being a bylaw to authorize the warden and clerk to execute an agreement for the use of Haliburton County Rail Trail with the Kawartha All-Terrain Vehicle Association and other provincial past members under the direct supervision of the Kawartha All-Terrain Vehicle Association be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a bylaw to appoint a new member to the Joint Accessibility Committee. We have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Dayu and Carter.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Carter. Be it resolved that bylaw 4168 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4138 respecting the appointment of members of council and public representatives of the Corporation of the County of Haliburton and to appoint members of council as representatives of the Corporation of the County of Haliburton to external boards and organizations be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a bylaw to regulate the alteration of shoreline. As discussed earlier, could I have a mover and a seconder? Go ahead. You've,
Discussion we had, the desert was included in this until we got permission to get out.
no, that's the tree cutting bylaw.
Well, what's this?
This is the shoreline preservation bylaw
Okay.
as amended
I thought
to
it
include only the
I thought it
three.
Mentioned trees in there somewhere. Okay, I was reading something else. Sorry. Apologize.
Mover and a seconder then for the shoreline bylaw. Counselor Carter, Counselor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Carter, seconded by Counselor Dayu, be it resolved that bylaw 4169 being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate the destruction or injuring of trees and native vegetation, to protect or regulate the placing or dumping of fill, the removal of topsoil, the alteration of the grade of land on shoreline properties in the geographic town areas of the township of Algonquin Highlands, municipality of Highlands East, and the township of Minden Hills, which are within the county of Haliburton, and to repeal and replace bylaw 4123, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there an abstention or against? Okay. That's carried. Next is a bylaw to appoint to bylaw enforcement officers for the county. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Counselor Dayu, Counselor Carter.
Moved by Counselor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Carter, be it resolved that bylaw 4169 being a bylaw to appoint bylaw enforcement officers for the corporation of the county of Haliburton be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, a bylaw for the single tier waste management service delivery model. Mover and seconder. Counselors Dayu and Burton.
Moved by Counselor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Burton, be it resolved that bylaw 4171 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Dillon Consulting Limited for the provision of a service delivery model for single tier waste management services within the county of Haliburton be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of motion? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the confirmatory bylaw? Counselor Carter and Fury.
Moved by Counselor Carter, seconded by Counselor Fury, be it resolved that bylaw 4172 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 22nd, 2023 meeting of Haliburton County Council be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Counselor McKechnie and Counselor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor McKechnie, seconded by Counselor Dayu, be it resolved that the March 22nd, 2023 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, everyone.